And welcome to the Same Old Arsenal. How are we, boys? Thank you very much for joining us. It's a little bit of a special edition tonight. We have got Mark with us, who's going to do his 1 to 11. Mark, how are you, mate?
Good. Had a couple of days off. Well, it feels, I say a couple of days off, it's kind of enforced, isn't it? But yeah, it's been weird. But what can you do?
You're here, mate. You're here. And of course, we've got Mr. Lee Judges with us as well. How are you, Lee?
Yeah, all good. I'm growing a beard because there's nothing else to do. So I thought, hopefully I'll get the old bearded sponsorship deal come through. You know what I mean? From the bearded company.
So be the new face of the
beard company. The new face of it. I'm looking. I need some work. Mark.
Not adverse to a sponsorship deal, Lee, are you?
I've done the garden as well today, So this is different me now.
You might keep him fit and keep him busy.
I've had to sack the gardener. I've had to get rid of him. You know what I mean? I have to do it myself now. You know what I mean? It's not good. Not good.
Boys, before we start, obviously we've started 5 minutes later tonight because there was a appreciation applause at 8 o'clock for the NHS staff. And I just want to take this opportunity to say a massive thank you to all the doctors, all the nurses, all the healthcare assistants and hospital staff that are working their hardest to try and help fight this virus and keep everybody safe. But not only them, everybody here at the Same Old Arsenal, I'm sure everybody will agree in thanking me to all of the police officers, all the police community support officers, all the firefighters, paramedics, ambulance staff and hospital crews that are helping to keep us all safe at this horrendous time. And more importantly, the environment safe as well, because we've still got members of the council that have got to be working in terms of the bin lorry men and everybody else that's in terms of keeping the environment safe. So a huge thank you goes out to them before we start. I think the main thing for us boys is that we are gutted, of course, that football is been put on hold and sport has been put on hold, but safety comes first, and our hearts do go out to those people that are either suffering with this, lost loved ones at the moment. But the most important thing for me is for everyone to keep safe. So please, guys, say a huge thank you to the NHS staff, all the emergency service staff, and of course the people that keep ourselves safe and the community. Guys,
here.
Yeah. Also, all the volunteers. That was fantastic.
Yeah, unbelievable.
People volunteering and everything like that. Absolutely. I'll tell you what. This is when the country becomes, goes into its own, doesn't it? When things like this happen and all that,
you hope the country unites.
English, you know what I mean? So.
Well, it is that, and it's just what you want the country to unite and come together in it, and we're doing the best we can with it, and it does make you proud to be British. So here to that, absolutely. Moving on, guys. We are going to be talking about some Arsenal players. We're going to be talking about some ex-Arsenal players, maybe some current ones. I'm not sure yet, and some memories down memory lane of Mark. Mr. Mark Partridge, you have put together a 1 to 11 of Arsenal players that you have seen live in your era. So first of all, Mark, what is your era of football? When does it start back from?
It doesn't go quite as far back as Lee. He's a couple of years older than me, just. So 1989, I guess, is when I was old enough to properly start remembering football, and we were blessed with Italia 90 that summer after, and what a tournament that was. That's when I really started getting into football, of course, and that's when you start playing football under nines and stuff like that. So, I played football in primary school, and I was a fan of football, but living where I lived, the nearest biggest team, and they are a massive club, by the way, is Ipswich Town. But I just didn't really. I went there a few times. That was probably my first live game. It was definitely my first live game. It was at Portman Road. But I didn't really feel the affinity. But then 1989, that famous night, my household was divided by my mum and dad, Carol and Barry, and my dad was a big football player, real flair player, winger, 2-footed. He appreciates football in its purest form. He was a Liverpool fan because, I say, where we lived, he just followed the best. And he openly admitted to me, and he said that to me that night. That was why he was following Liverpool. And I asked my mum why she was following Arsenal, and she said she used to be able to see Highbury out of one of her many bedroom windows. She was moved around London as a kid in her youth, and ended up seaside, like most people do, take progressive steps out over the years, and ended up there. So that's why Arsenal. That's when. And obviously it didn't turn out too bad that night, and we went on to have the best run in the history of Arsenal.
Yeah,
Good
mate,
time to start
absolutely.
supporting.
That is a great time to start supporting Arsenal. So the idea, guys, is for those that don't know, we have done this before on other podcasts, but it's to pick your best Arsenal 11. You can pick any formation you want. The only rule is you have to have seen them live or in your era. So that is the rules. Mark, you can pick any formation you've gone for. You want, mate. What have you gone for?
Well, I don't know. What did we settle on, Dan? We was back and forth, weren't we, a couple of times.
There was a few, mate. It was very hard for you, wasn't it?
It's so
hard.
It's not as hard for me as what it is you guys, because, to be clear, I'm not a season ticket holder. I am a follower of Arsenal. I get there when I can, when work, money, time with a family permits over the years. So I haven't been loads, but I've been, I try and go at least once every season in my life. So it was tougher, and I seem to miss certain players. For example, my hero, Ian Wright, never seen live.
Wow.
So not in my team today. Absolutely gutted about that, because he would have been the first name on the team sheet, but I was never fortunate enough to see him play live. So that's a huge disappointment. But I've seen plenty of other good players, so we'll get into it. But I've gone for I think we settled for a 4-3-3 in the end, didn't we?
Yeah, I think so. And swapping some players around, which was hard, mate, to be honest, because there has been so many, like you say. So what we'll do, mate, we'll start with your goalkeeper, and then Lee and I will have a bit of a chat with yourself about why you've picked that goalkeeper and just talk a bit about him. So who have you gone for, first of all, in goal, Mark?
Before we start, I want to just say that there's a prize to be won. And
there is.
So
you've got it on you, haven't you?
I've got it here. Lee might remember this from the last game at Highbury. It was probably sitting on his seat when he got there, with a T-shirt, a white T-shirt that said, "I was here," or
"I was here." Yeah, I was there. Yeah,
that's not
an unbelievable prize.
That's not here. But the little bag, the little A to Z of the history of Highbury that came in the thing, full of all beautiful things.
History, yeah.
And the programme versus, obviously, Wigan Athletic from the day.
There we go.
So if you want that, all you've got to do is send me £100. No, all you've got to do is like this episode of the podcast. And what they got to do, Dan, I don't know what they've got to do. How are we going to know?
What we'll do is, that's fine. What we'll do is we'll pick a winner. Once this goes onto Twitter, if you like the video and retweet it, we will select a winner at random. And then Mark there will be able to DM you and send it over to you. So a great prize there to win, guys. A last day at Highbury, a little souvenir for you to keep a programme, and an A to Z of history in a little bag for you. So please, once this video's out on Twitter, please hit a like and please retweet. But even more importantly, go and follow Mark at Shader Chase, is it, or Chase Shader?
Shade Chaser 1. Just
Shade Chaser 1.
Just to be clear as well, that's not because I like chucking shade out towards people. It's because I don't like the sun.
We would never have guessed, mate, with your amazing tan. Please be sure to.
Let's get into it. Let's not worry about all that. Let's get into it. So
Please be sure to like this video as well, guys. Hit your little like on YouTube, please. Much appreciated. Mark, your goalkeeper. Who have you gone for, mate?
It's easy. David Seaman. That was easy for me. I've seen many, many goalkeepers. It seems to be all the second string ones along the years. But old Say fans, I got to see him play a couple of times, and what a presence, what a man. You don't get an MBE for nothing. You don't win what he's won in a game You know, the way he conducts himself on and off the pitch. Yes, a couple of mistakes. Typically had to be against Naeem. That was salt in the wounds, wasn't it? That day.
It was.
But you're talking about two, or if you include Lee Dixon's own goal, possibly three mistakes in a career spanning. I don't know how long he played for Arsenal, but it was a very, very long time. I think it's 400 odd appearances or something stupid like that. You know, second highest capped goalkeeper for England behind Banksy. No one will catch that record. He was just fantastic, wasn't he? A shot stopper, command in the area. Some may argue that he played behind the best back four ever lived, but he was a part.
He was part of that, though, wasn't he? He was part of that back five, as they call it, with David Seaman. You know, all of England, one of the best was the best in Europe, one of the best that Arsenal have ever had. Lee, with David Seaman, I mean, I know we've done a similar thing with yourself before on another podcast, and I think you went for a similar with David Seaman. What do you think? Memories of David Seaman, because for me, the one save against Sheffield United in the FA Cup, I don't think I've ever seen a save that will beat that in my lifetime, and it was so good, wasn't it? It was ridiculous.
Yeah, he was. Listen, when he first signed for Arsenal, a lot of people weren't too happy about it because there was John Luke, which was a big favourite at Arsenal, and that a lot of them weren't too happy. And he come in that season. I think, if I'm quite correct, 18 goals they conceded that season. To go and win the league, and he won the fans over within months of coming. When you realise that he was the best goalkeeper, he made a fantastic save up at Sunderland. You know, when we was close to winning the league, it was absolutely brilliant, and he was just a very, very good, sound goalkeeper. And I think that, do you know what? I'm going to say this now. Since David Seaman has left Arsenal, I've appreciated him a lot more because of the goalkeepers we've had since. We've had no one in his ilk, you know what I mean? Jens Lehmann would probably be the next one, but I don't think that he was as in the same category as David Seaman, as far as I'm concerned. And I think it was always nice to have England's goalkeeper as well. Like England's number one.
Agree, man.
There's something about that. So I didn't really appreciate him until a few years ago when you realise how good he was.
Typically, yeah, you don't realise what he got
till he's not there.
And you know, I think that when you say that, I think that's such a compliment, you know, of what he was, and you know, never. I just feel that perhaps because he wasn't spectacular with his saves, you know what I mean, because he was, you know, technically very, very good. He didn't have to make spectacular saves because he was in the right positions and everything, you know. So yeah, I think that
they caught things, Lee.
Yeah, he was a good.
You know, you had people like Mark Bosnich at the time who was acrobatically tipping back passes over the crossbar just to look good, and you know, David Seaman was plucking things out of the top corner and just was just a typical Northern lad, was just saying, yeah, all right, I've done my job, get on with it, you know, up the pitch we go, you know, so no nonsense, just do your job.
I think the last thing I'll say about David Seaman before we move on as well is one thing that I think he had better than any other goalkeeper I've seen was his coordination. He just seemed to know his right foot from his left foot. Good. He was that concise with his positioning as a goalkeeper. And one other save that I will bring up is one that I don't actually think people will remember, but it was in the FA Cup final against Southampton where we won 1-0 with the Pires goal. Was it Carr then? Yeah. That save against Brett Omerod, if no one has seen it, go and watch it. David Seaman saved there. Everything he is doing technically as a goalkeeper, and anyone out there as goalkeepers, Craig, I know you're watching, you'll definitely agree. Everything that he's doing as a goalkeeper there is world class. That is an absolute world class save that will never get the credit it deserves because it's not flamboyant. It's just technically good. So that's the one thing I'll say about David Seaman. His coordination was second to none. Mark,
that's what I'm saying about him, really, is because he just made difficult things look easy. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
The way he could shift his weight distribution and his balance, like you say, his coordination. He was a fantastic shot stopper. His reactions, his agility was underrated. He's
big like Craig as well. Big like Craig.
Big like Craig. He was, yeah. He had rather large extremities. He was.
What happens in the showers at schools, boys? I just don't want to know. Like, you know what I mean?
He was England's number one.
There.
Safe hands, Seaman. What a
There we go.
goalkeeper.
Are you going to start with next your right back, Mark?
We'll go on to right back because that was my position, and it's just a lot like him, really. It's not. I could have gone down a few routes with this one. Lauren, obviously, was good. Bakary Sanya, but Oleg Lunjny. But I went with Dicko because I remember he came with Steve Bold for a fee of around less than $1 million. I think,
pennies.
Lee will remember. He was probably
300, 400,000, if I remember.
Yeah,
right.
but I think the two of them together they were both that sort of figure each. You know what I mean? So together, I think But anyway, just what a player! Just slipped in there. I think he played for Arsenal for 15 years. Didn't put a foot wrong. He made the team of the season a few times, which is, for an unassuming right back. Cap for England, done a fantastic job. I vaguely remember, I don't know, Lee may remember more than me. I've got something in my brain telling me that he used to step up and take some penalties when he first.
Yeah, he did take penalties.
Yeah. So and for a right back to sort of take on that responsibility is quite a thing. And I don't think he used to miss, Lee, to be honest. So
I think I don't recall him missing that many. I know he missed.
I don't think he took too many, but I remember a season when he took a few and scored.
Yeah, I think he took one. He probably missed one. I can't remember who against, and Ian Wright then took over, and I think Ian Wright then went up and missed, but then he started scoring regular righty, so I think it was from there. But yeah, I think that it was a sign that he was taking penalties and doing a good job. I remember him scoring against Liverpool in a title decide, not a title decide, but there was us and him in the '91 season. You are correct. He did take a few penalties.
I think he was Mr. Consistent, wasn't he, Lee Dixon? Mr. Consistent, 7 or 8 out of 10 every time. He just knew what it was to be a gooner as well, and part of that back line that we mentioned earlier. So I think it's a great shout, mate. I don't think you get anything from me.
It's interesting that you say he knew what it was to be a gooner, because at that time, people who came to our club, they were in awe of the marble halls and things like that. But he grew up as a boy as a Man City fan.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
And he come down and obviously played for Stoke, whatever. And then he came to us with Baldy. But he won the league in his first season, that season, '89. And never looked back. Invincible, double. FA Cups, leagues, mental what he achieved in the game, really, and very underrated. And that's what you'll notice about my team as we go through. I'm a defender. Think people know that by now. So those qualities appeal to me, and I like characters, and I like consistency, and I like people to do their job first, and then their other things second. So if you are a right back, firstly, defend. And then, if you want to go forward and do something else fancy, if you think you've got the time and the space, fair enough. But let's get the job done first. You know what I mean? And that's what he done.
Can't disagree there, mate, at all. To be honest with you, we've had some great right backs in our time, but Lee Dixon is right up there. Left back, mate, was this hard? Because there's quite a few you could have chose from, I imagine. But
yeah, there was. Some others, no point mentioning, but Silvino. That's been a few. Anyway, we'll move on. But so I toyed with the idea of it came down to two, and it's obvious. It came down to Nigel Winterburn or Ashley Cole, and my heart was telling me to go with Nigel Winterburn because of what Ashley done. And then I tried to remove that and actually see outside of that and think about what Ashley actually achieved in the game and the grotesque amount of money that was put in front of him at the time for a left back, which I have absolutely no argument he was worth. At that time, he was the best left back in the world. He was.
He was.
He took over from Roberto Carlos, in my opinion. And
Definitely.
had he have moved to Barcelona, he would have won everything. And to be fair, I mean, Chelsea fans, whatever, they won't see this, but they'll be jumping up and down now saying he did win everything. And he did. So, I can't knock that. So, yeah, just for pure Nigel, there's nothing wrong with Nigel. We're absolutely fantastic. Part of that defensive unit that I always bang on about, and he's a good player. But Ashley was a good player, good defender, really super fast, super athletic. He just was a part of that new, and that's how we're going to move into the new era, you know, and the new game, if you like, with athletic players like that. And he really, really was a driving force in that, wasn't he? You know, looking back to that England side, and the professionalism coming into the game, he was.
I think you touch on England there, and I think that's important because, you know, he did get over 100 caps and Nigel Winterburn didn't. And I think that with Ashley Cole, how good he was there, we've already mentioned he was the best in the world. I think when at that time, when people look at that Arsenal side, which was world class in certain areas, he was the one that everybody would have said would have got in a world 11. So, like, you know, people could argue that with Vieira, because there was Zidane about and the Rivaldos and all those sort of guys, even at the back with the Sol Campbells, you know, you had the other players around them and the Maldinis and Cannavaros and all that probably would have got in a World 11. Ashley Cole would have got in a World 11, like we say, ahead of Roberto Carlos. And I think that's the biggest compliment you can give someone. If you're the best in the world in your position, you've hit it. You've hit you've done what you should have achieved as a footballer, and you can't achieve no more. And there he has won everything in football. You know, Champions Leagues, from a League Cup to an FA Cup to league titles, and he's done it both with Arsenal and with Chelsea. So I can't really argue there, Lee. Have you got any other people that should get ahead of Ashley Cole in that position?
Look, listen, for me, I've been very, very fortunate, you know, to have witnessed Kenny Sampson in his prime. Was an absolute outstanding player. I think had it all. In a era when it wasn't like it is now, or even when Ashley played it, you know, he could get forward and he could defend. I remember watching Kenny Sampson when it was pouring with rain, loads of mud about, like, and he'd come off without any mud on him because he didn't have to slide tackle. His positioning and everything was really, really good. An absolute outstanding player. Sammy Nelson was the left back that I remember. Before him, and we go on about, you know, I've been fortunate for fullbacks as well. When you say about Lee Dixon, you know, like Mark there's mentioning too, in Nigel Winterburn and obviously Ashley, but I've got Kenny Sampson, Sammy Nelson over on the right hand side. Before Lee Dixon was Viv Anderson and Pat Rice, which were outstanding, you know, fullbacks. Viv Anderson was probably one of the best right backs I'd ever seen, but look, didn't stay around.
Man United, though.
Went to Man United, and that tarnished it for me. Like, now I had a conversation with Nigel Winterburn. We was mucking about, and I said, "What's it like being the third best left back, you know, at the Arsenal? Like, you know, giving a bit of stick." And he turned around and he said, "You know what? To be the third best player at left back in Arsenal is I'll take that."
Still a compliment,
you know,
yeah.
It's a very, very big high compliment that you're the third, you know, because that takes him over players like. Bob McNair was a double winner in '71, and of course Sammy Nelson in my time. There's probably more the older generation could probably mention. So he said he'd take that all day long. And when you look at the two players in front of him, which was Kenny Sampson and Ashley Cole, I think Kenny, correct me if I'm wrong, he was in the 70s, 74, 76 international caps. Now, in the generation when there weren't so many caps about, that's over 100 caps to what Ashley Cole, you know. So Ashley Cole as well got 100. So that just shows you how what sort of standards it was. And, you know, when you look at Nigel Winterburn, probably didn't get as many international caps in him, but won some medals, certainly won more than Kenny, you know what I mean? So as Mark says, Nigel probably for the honours and credibility he deserves, probably a wrong era for him because he had Stuart Pearce in the England set up as well. But I think like people like Tony Durago got in front of him at times, Graham Lasso, you know, and that.
I think Tony Durago was a snooker player, Lee, wasn't he?
So what was his name? Played for Leeds. Well, do you know what I can't think.
I thought he's the Maltese snooker player. How's he got on the pitch?
Well, something like that. He's
Oh, Nigel. Sorry, Nigel. We're going to get this lad. He's got
if someone can in the chat can remind me what his name is, it was something like that.
I know what you mean.
I know what
I know what you mean.
Was it Dorigo?
Dorigo. I think it's Dorigo.
Yeah, Dorigo.
Like,
Yeah, I think it might be.
And then Graham Lasso come along, obviously.
Yeah, and I'll tell you that now. I'm not being biased when I say that. Nigel was better than them by a long chalk.
Yeah,
you know,
agreed.
sometimes,
Agreed.
you know, I always think with England, there was always that, you know, if your face fits and blah, 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 like, you know, well done, Nigel, Dorigo, you know what I mean? So,
yeah, well, what you got to remember is that during Nigel's time, obviously, there was 2 Spurs lads managing England, weren't there? Venables and Glenn Hoddle.
Yeah.
So,
yeah.
Graham Taylor and Bobby Robson was probably the one.
Well, yeah, that's true.
The Nigel Winterburn, you know, your old Ipswich manager there.
Yeah,
but listen, you know, there would have been an. I always say this: if England was Spain or Germany at that time or whatever, they would have just gone right. I don't, you know, he might not be the best left back, he might not be the best right back as individuals, but that's the best back 5 that should have been played for England.
Exactly.
That back 5, mate. It really should have.
And it should have been. Steve Bold never got the recognition that he deserved as a central defender, as far as international caps are concerned.
Yeah, I think he's the most underrated that never played for England, along with Steve Bruce. I think the pair of them two, I can't believe they didn't get a cap. But I mean, if you look at the players that got ahead of them,
Oldie got a couple. I'm not pretty sure, but Steve Bruce, another one, never got no international caps. Now,
crazy.
You know what I mean? So, and when you look at
you look at the players that did get ahead, Lee. You look at Lee Dixon and Nigel Winterburn, who should have gone in. They got the Neville brothers. I mean, Stuart Pearce was great. Don't get me wrong at left back, but the Neville brothers have got ahead of Dixon and Winterburn for most of the time in the 90s as well, didn't they? You know, and that was at the time. It was the best back 4 in Europe. Mark Keown as well.
But that goes back to what you were saying, because the reason Gary Neville got in was because of his link up with Beckham, wasn't it?
Yeah, sometimes you get that. And look, listen,
sometimes it works like that. Yeah,
was a decent fullback, if I'll be honest. You know, when you look back, he was a top defender. And you know, but like, you know, when people turn around to me, like, you know, like Claude when Claude's on it, Claude would go with me and go Kenny Sampson, because we had seen them both. But if someone like,
because he's old as well.
Yeah, because he's old as well. Like, thank you very much, Mark. Like, you know what I mean? So I hope we have the hottest summer of the year coming up right now. Like, you know what I mean? She's getting
this is going to be a 4-month quarantine for me if I do.
But if anybody turns around and says, "Oh, Ashley Cole," I don't think you can argue that. You know what I mean? I think it's just they're both talented players, and whoever you go with, you go with.
Yeah, absolutely. Moving on to your centre back pairing, Mark. If you've gone for it at the back.
Well, I'm not undecided about one, but I didn't know what to do. Oh, the one's obvious. Captain, Mr. Arsenal.
Yeah, gotta be.
17 years old, making his debut. 19 years old, captain of the football club, second highest cap bloke for the club in the history behind David O'Leary, Lee's mate. Just casually dines with him. What can you say about Tony Adams?
Well, you can't say much more.
Everything is just everything, wasn't he? You know, without him in 91, 91, they lost the game when he was in Chelmsford, Nick. And then they went on, he came back and back they go. He reinvented himself, changed his life when Arsene Wenger came, and was reborn as a human being. And what a fantastic man he is now with the charity work he does. And that's a lot of what you'll see about these players. Lee Dixon, OBE, David Seaman, MBE, Tony Adams, OBE. A lot of these players have gone on to do fantastic things in the community and the sport. They've given back to the sport, you know. And Tony won it all. He won it all, and he led from the front, by the way. You know, he scored vital goals. I mean, largely down to Steve Bowles' flick-ons, but he did score a lot of goals. And who will ever forget the pose, the stance, the statue, the man against Everton? That is in brass outside the stadium, and so it should be. So he's my captain. He's the first choice centre half. I don't think anybody's going to disagree with that.
No, yeah, Canio is one of the best.
He got in mind without a doubt.
You talk about defenders. He's the one that everybody's going to pick. You know,
The second one's tough.
Yes, massively, hugely tough.
Yeah, he must have had some decisions there.
I have, because I've seen Pascal Sagan, I've seen Senderos, I've seen Johan Giroud, I've seen some of the dross we've had in that centre half over the last. Oh, my
Sylvester, Scalacci.
William Gallup.
The ones you're going to mention now, right? I could say that are probably the second centre half unless it's one, right? But they all would walk into this current setup now.
Without doubt, even at the age and the fitness they are today, I would put, and this is it. I would put Martin Keown in our back five now.
Yeah, quality. I know what you're saying. You know, heart of a lion.
And the fact
so you've gone for Keown now.
I've gone for Keown because Sol came close, and I love Sol Campbell. What he'd done, he crossed the divide, and he was invincible. But do you know what it is? It comes down to character with me. I'm not sure about Sol. I think Sol. I don't know him personally, so these opinions are my own, based on comments in the media, press releases, things that could have been taken out of context. I agree, I accept. So, but just what I've seen, he thinks he was lucky. We were lucky he came to us. And I would argue he would have achieved absolutely nothing if we'd have left him at Spurs. And he's lucky we let him cross the divide. Mammoth of a centre half, don't get me wrong, he was. But we would have achieved things without him, and we was before, and we did after. So there's just a little bit of me that always thinks he was one of them.
And Sol Campbell never jumped on Van Nistelrooy, did he? Keown did, so he gets the nod.
And the thing with Keown is that he still talks today about doing the right things with the right attitude, and our players should be doing the right things. And he came to Arsenal, it wasn't quite right, wasn't quite the right time, and he went away and came back. He had the courage to take the challenge again, you know, and he succeeded big time. So, yeah. Martin Keown.
I think it's a great shout. Lee, can you argue that Steve Bould was better than Martin Keown, or was it quite close?
I've always said that Steve Bould was a fantastic defender. Like, you know, going about central defenders again, the first one that I can really remember was Frank McClintock. In the 70s was a club, but he was, when I started supporting Arsenal, he was just leaving, or he was on the wane. I can't really remember him too much. Terry Neal was a great centre half that my dad always goes on about as well. Like, then Terry Mancini, you got to have one for the Baldies. Was you know, what I would say a more of a iconic, you know, sort of a player, like as was Willie Young. But then, you know, one of the players that I think that gets very, very underrated is David O'Leary. Not because
here we go.
He was a central defender before his time. But Martin Keown, you know, look at we're railing up from this certain to this era of the players that would just walk into any of this current Arsenal side. Martin Keown, I thought was better than Steve Bould, because you know what, he was just a better defender. He could defend. If it comes to defending, I'd even put him in front of Tony Adams as someone, right? If you put your life on someone to mark someone out of a game, stick Martin Keown on there. I'll put them in front of anybody. Yeah, he was pacey. He come from Oxford, very, very. If you've ever seen him spoken, he's very, very polite sort of man. Complete and utter nutter, by the way. Apparently, I've never ever met him, but everybody, all the old guys say what a complete and utter nutter he was. But when it comes to defending, he was a serious player, very, very serious player, and I wouldn't argue that. I would go for Sol Campbell. The one reason that I would go for Sol Campbell, and it is the only way, he'd come in and replace Tony Adams, and Tony Adams
No one.
Well, he did. He come into the last season where Tony only played about 10, 15 games in that season. It became Martin Keown and Sol Campbell. But when Sol Campbell took over, Tony Adams has never spoken about, oh, well, if only we had Tony Adams, if we only had Tony Adams, because Sol Campbell done an excellent job. Now, when other players have left, it's, we miss Vieira, we miss Henry, we miss that.
Agree.
No one ever says that about Tony Adams. And this was the best player, one of the two or arguably in the top three players ever to play for Arsenal, because Sol Campbell come in and done such a hell of a job. And that's the reason why I always say Sol Campbell. But what Mark is saying there, I wouldn't have an argument with Keown. I think Keown was sometimes, they say about the back five. So a lot of people, a lot of ex-players go, the back five was superb and Martin Keown. I think that's such a disrespect for Martin Keown, because he was, better than that, I think in 2002, 2003, 2004, we was a fantastic team, but in that 2002, I still think the 2002 team was fantastic. A lot of people dismiss it about it. Where it won the double, and it also went unbeaten away from home that season. And because we went unbeaten for the whole season, everybody goes mad about that. But when you look at that and break that down, we went unbeaten at home as well, where that team didn't. You know what I mean? But that team won the double. There's so many sort of arguments about the Invincibles and whatever. But that 2002 team, was sensational. Martin Keown was very, very much part of that, along with Tony Adams and, of course, Sol Campbell. But, as I say, Martin Keown, I think, goes under the radar a little bit, like my mate David O'Leary.
There we go. Boys,
I would have picked David O'Leary. I would have picked him had I have seen him.
If you'd have seen him.
I would.
He was a quality. I'll tell you what, he was a player. If he played now, everybody would be more thought of, because he played in an era where he was more of a ball, playing centre half. The one thing I wouldn't say to him with David. The one thing, he was too nice for a centre half. Do you know what I mean? A little bit like, Martin. He would never have roughed up Van Nistelrooy like Keown did. You know what I mean? Like, never would have done that. Oh no, we can't be doing that. So. But a good ball playing central defender.
Boys, Didier Drogba, Diego Costa, Harry Kane, and Wayne Rooney. The one thing that all them link is they always score goals against Arsenal. Keown didn't come up against any of those, and imagine if he did. Yeah. I'd love to have seen it, because I don't think they would have scored half as many against us. The defenders that they've had, that they were against, all those four players I've just said, they've been up against the ones we've just taken the mick out of, like the Mustafi, Skilacci, Stepanov, Stenderos. They've come up against all of them and just had them for breakfast, didn't they? And I don't think Keown, Keown, I remember him saying on Match of the Day once, I'd have loved to have been up against Costa. I'd have loved to have been up against Drogba. I'd love to be up against Harry Kane right now. And you just think, and so I'm with you, Mark. His attitude and character definitely gets him the nod for me. We've got to move on because time's plugging on. Centre midfield. Who's your first one? You've gone for Mark, haven't you? So who have you gone for first, mate?
I've gone for Patrick Vieira. Came in contrary to a quiz that I was at the other day where they said Arsene Wenger signed him. He came before Arsene Wenger signed, on the proviso that when Wenger arrived, he was there and he would build his team around him. But anyway, I jest. He was fantastic. What can you say that hasn't already been said about Patrick Vieira? His last kick of the game. There you go. Have the FA Cup. See you later. What a man. And Lee, I think, if we start Lee off, by the way, we've got to put a timer on Lee with Patrick Vieira, because he's seen about 4 or 5 games the other day and he was standing, you know what I mean?
Well, to be fair though, it's a great point. Because whenever Patrick Vieira, whenever we talk about Arsenal players, everyone says that Ian Wright, Thierry Henry and Dennis Bergkamp are the best 3 Arsenal players, right? But Lee, you would disagree. Is that right?
I disagree totally. Now, after watching, I'm going to say this now. Patrick Vieira is up there with the best, and I'll tell you why. Because when it mattered, he was the one showing. He was the one in the midfield. You know what I mean? Battling it through, tackles go. Some of the tackles that go in now on him now would be straight red cards, and he'd just brush him up and just carry it on. And he had it all, as far as I'm concerned. Like, and I like people turn around and go, "Oh, he's the." And the best thing I could say about this is this: they turn around and say, "Oh yeah, what you've got to have Thierry Henry, like, you know." So I say, right, yeah, fair enough. Thierry Henry, absolutely outstanding. But if you had Patrick Vieira and Ian Wright in his prime, or you had Nicolas Anelka in his prime, or even Aubameyang, we can say them three there, like, yeah, and that would be some hell of a side. But take Patrick Vieira out of that, you know what I mean? There, you can still have your Henry, and you haven't got your Patrick Vieira. There's no one that can come close.
I'll tell you what'll happen if you take Patrick Vieira out. You'll end up 10th.
Yeah. You wouldn't. Yeah, I'm telling you, you could still win leagues without Henry. Because you had Ian Wright and
if you had Aubameyang, yeah,
Aubameyang, yeah. But I'll tell you what, you couldn't if Patrick Vieira was out of that side, and and that's one of the reasons why Arsenal have never been the same. He was an absolute beast, and
great point.
I think that for me, he's up there. And I just, you know what I'm going to say now, like, before we go there, you didn't really appreciate it until it's gone. Like what we did with Dave Seaman. I've watched these games back. I challenge anybody to watch the 2002 game at Old Trafford, the 2003 game at Old Trafford, and the semi-final against Spurs, and watch him in those games. Thierry Henry plays in that game, but if it weren't for Thierry Henry didn't even play in the game at Manchester United. If he does not play in those three games, we do not win those games. That to me, biggest compliment of all.
I think Lee's right in a way, because we haven't replaced Patrick Vieira, Mark, have we? You know, since he's gone in 2005, we still fail to replace him. And some would argue, and I have made the argument, that Gilberto was a very underrated player. Probably was the most underrated Arsenal player, in my opinion, because when you didn't see Gilberto Silva, when he was gone, you really missed Gilberto Silva, like really did. And there was somebody, the best compliment I can give him is, with Gilberto Silva, just before we go, because I've touched on him, is if you watch a game of football, you'll think, what's Gilberto Silva do then? I don't really understand what he does. Watch the game again and watch Gilberto Silva, and you'll understand the game of football. You'll understand the game of football. And there he is. Yeah. You will. If you watch Gilberto Silva in a game of football, you will understand how a game of football is supposed to be played, because that guy was so underrated, it was unbelievable. So that's the biggest compliment I give to Gilberto Silva. Marky, who are you going for in your midfield with Patrick Vieira? Who are the other two? Oh, you're on mute, mate. You're on mute, I think.
He's only going to press the
mute. There we go. Not Gilberto Silva.
That's why I wanted to mention him, because I knew you had him in.
Yeah, well, he's on my bench, if I'm allowed a bench. But him, Fabregas, Perez, Ljungberg, Limpar, so many fantastic midfielders over the years. But the FA Cup was very special to me. We've won it twice on my birthday. It's around that time of the year. It's some little fantasy of mine. And I think it's what you dream when you play in the park. You don't dream of saying, and they've won the league. I think you say, oh, and they've won the cup. Well, they're going to Wembley. You know, that's what we dream about. And so that's why I get really angry with people who try and walk down the FA Cup and try and claim it's not a major trophy, because it really frustrates me that it's a special thing. And no time would you get Yeovil Town dethroning an Arsenal team that lost two games in the best part of 18 months, and a third division Yeovil Town come to our, we went down there and got rolled over, whatever, Wrexham, another. What a beautiful game, what a beautiful competition, and the hopes and dreams, it's just fantastic. And so, Aaron Ramsey, Mr. FA Cup final, this pitch is mine, that's it's say no more, really.
Player of the decade, Lee.
Aaron
Ramsey.
I wouldn't. I'm a big. I think I've made no secret of big Aaron Ramsey fan, and that season before he got that injury, and then he come back and scored against Hull in the cup final, and then to do it against Chelsea again, and then the goal against Spurs when he went round going, I own this pitch. You know what I mean? Was quality, and I think that I think that Aaron, wouldn't get into my team because obviously I've seen Liam Brady play, and I think that Cesc Fabregas would come close here, but because of what Aaron done, as what Mark says, was 2 winning FA Cup finals, is an amazing thing. Liam Brady was a great footballer for Arsenal, one of the best players I've ever seen, but he is putting that little bit of higher order because of the FA Cup against Man United when he was absolutely different class. Because of these, I don't know why it's changed a little bit now, but Aaron Ramsey has scored 2 winning goals in the FA Cup, and if that means, to me it means a lot, and I know it does to Mark. And for that reason, I've got no arguments with that. Like, you know what I mean? And it, a fantastic
just that
player,
goal. It wasn't just that goal. I was there to 2012 FA Cup. We're 2-0 down at half time.
Yeah, we was
against Aston Villa, and Van Persie scores a couple of penalties, but Henry was left on the bench that day. But Ramsey, I don't know if he scored, but he was instrumental in the fight back. He just never give up. Never, his attitude, his engine was massively underrated.
Yeah, well, we miss him now. We miss him immensely. Another one that since he's gone, we've missed him a lot more than what people would have ever imagined.
Well, we're being better side with him now, aren't we? You
don't get offered 400 grand a week to go and play in Turin
if you're not good.
Exactly. And it weren't just, the season where he was instrumental for us. He was instrumental for us in the game against Hull, absolutely. But he was instrumental for us that season. It was the best season he's ever had, wasn't he? It was absolutely outstanding. And I think with his injuries, it's a shame because of his leg break at Stoke, and he did have some hamstring problems. The problem with Aaron Ramsey was his injuries. But when he did play, he gave 100%. And I was really gutted when he went last year. I really was. I thought I thought it was criminal,
And if it wasn't for his injuries, he wouldn't have scored in those cup finals because he would have been that good that he would have been sniffed up a lot earlier. He had another yard of pace before that injury. He lost a yard of pace. He was still quick, but he lost a yard of pace to what he was before that. Fantastic player. It was bossing the game against. I can't even think of it. Wasn't who is it when who broke his leg now?
Sure.
At Stoke, he was bossing that game at Stoke that day. Absolutely.
Oh, sorry, that's what you mean. Yeah.
19 years of age, absolutely bossing that game, and they went and done that to him, And I can tell you that time Stoke were not one a great side. They were a very, very difficult nut to crack. You know what I mean? And he was 19 years of age, and him and Fabregas running the show, running it.
Yeah. I think as well, look, with Ramsey, Diaby broke his leg, never come back from it. Eduardo broke his leg, never come back from it. Ramsey did, and I know he was a bit younger when it happened, but Diaby was young as well. Ramsey for me just came into that side, and he was just different class for me. When he was fit, he was one of the best players. Covered every blade of grass and give 110%. So no arguments there for me, Mark, whatsoever. So you got Vieira and Ramsey. Who's the other lad in midfield with you?
So we're talking character, aren't we? And so Ramsey's character to come back from that injury. So this may be a bit of a strange choice, but this lad was a West Ham fan growing up, but he came through the Arsenal academy, went on to play 400 games. He was another one who sort of found a second lease of life under Arsene Wenger. Again, we're talking FA Cup, but we're also talking Invincibles. We're talking two double seasons. We're talking signed as a trainee in 1989, so bang on, followed my following of supporting of Arsenal coincided with him signing, and hugely underrated. What a battler, a performer, a warrior, a drinker, a storyteller, character. Big game goal scorer, but also if Patrick stuck the boot in, he'd back Patrick up. Ray Parlour.
Romford Pele.
Vastly,
I think you're right.
Talk
Talk about I think so. You talk about Gilberto being underrated. There's an argument Parlour was even more so. He was so consistent when he played. And it's a great shout there, Mark. I think the reason I remember him is it's only Ray Parlour in the FA Cup final, Millennium Stadium. That was a hell of a goal, wasn't it? Absolute quality goal. And he scored some great goals for us, And I think as well with Ray Parlour, when it was 2002, we won the league at Old Trafford. He was the man of the match on that day, and he was absolutely outstanding.
Yeah, also he played in the 1997 to 1998 campaign when we won the double. We played wide right, and he was probably Bergkamp takes a lot of the praise, and rightly so. But Ray Parlour on that side was immense that season. How he never went to the World Cup that year, I never know.
Crazy.
I never know. They're talking about England. Do you know what? He played probably the most outstanding season I've ever seen him play. And Glenn Hoddle picked Darren Anden, who played about 6 games.
Sick note.
Scandalous decision. But, that's it. One of those things that face fits. But absolutely, as you said,
it was man of the match. It was man of the match when we won the FA Cup against Newcastle.
And he was brilliant on that day. He was brilliant, as you said there at Old Trafford that day. He was outstanding. He'd had an outstanding game against Chelsea 3 or 4 days before that. And he's one of those things that what was on the tin. He did exactly what you required from a footballer. Vastly underrated.
Few hat tricks as well, boys. Word of Bremen hat trick, Newcastle hat trick. Great player. Great player.
I didn't realise till I started doing this that he's actually the all-time Premiership appearance holder for Arsenal.
Yeah,
333 games he's played in the Premier League for Arsenal. Brilliant
player.
Really good player. 3 up front then, Mark. Where do you want to start, mate?
Well, the obvious. I can't pick right, as I told you at the beginning. I can't pick right. Never saw him play. I'm still gutted about that to this day because he was my hero. But Bergkamp and Henry just changed football, didn't he? Lee will remember. I don't know, Dan, probably, because your memory is fantastic. But before Bergkamp came, not so much in Inter Milan, but he was doing things for Holland that were out of this world. And I can remember a headline in one of the tabloids saying he scored. I can't find it. I tried to find it. It must have been a pre-World Cup friendly or something, or a 94 friendly or something like that. It must have been. And they come to Wembley and destroyed us, Holland. Dennis Bergkamp got both, and it was Dennis the Menace. So I vividly remember this. He was absolutely world class. Well, the day we signed him, Ian Wright tells a funny story that he bumped into in a petrol station.
Yeah.
Couldn't believe it. But as a fan, as a boy of 15 years old, when he came, I remember thinking, whoa, we have just signed. I mean, Anders Limpar was one thing. Stefan Schwartz was another thing. It was, though. He was an international player who was playing in the Serie A, which was massive at that time, Lazio, and a lot of English players were going out there, and we signed Stefan Schwartz back the other day. He's a good player, by the way. But we got Dennis Bergkamp. I'll never ever forget that. What a signing. Unreal.
That was
blew my mind.
I think with Dennis Bergkamp as well, you look at how good he was when he came. I remember Paul Merson saying he watched him in training with Wrighty when he first came. And I remember Merson saying to Wrighty, he goes, they must be brilliant, Inter Milan. Because if they're getting rid of him, do you know what I mean? They must be absolutely amazing, Inter Milan. And I think, if he did fly and he did come, we could have won a lot more games in Europe. I think that was a massive, massive downside because he was that good, Dennis Bergkamp. And I don't think there's a player that's played for the club that is as unexpected as Dennis Bergkamp. The stuff that he did with a football, he saw before anybody else on the pitch. His vision, his creativity, his technical ability was sensational. And he still scored the best goal I've ever seen for Arsenal, my favourite ever goal for Arsenal, and that was against Newcastle. And I don't care what anyone says. He meant to do that people who say that he didn't mean to do that don't know nothing about football. If you look at what he's doing there technically, it is. I've never seen a goal like it ever again, and I don't think I ever will. It was that good. There's no other player that can do what he's done there. And it weren't just that one. He did it against Leicester as well with the hat trick, and all 3 goals got into goal of the month. And the third one made Matty Elliott look absolutely dreadful, and then put it past Casey Keller. So many great goals with Dennis Bergkamp. And the last thing I'll say about him is he made everybody around him better. You ask Thierry Henry, Ian Wright, Nicolas Anelka, who they love the most. Dennis Bergkamp, because they put the ball on the plate for him. And that is why, for me, he's the best player ever to wear the Arsenal shirt.
Yeah, listen, he changed the face of Arsenal Football Club. What Arsenal, well, not so much what they are now, but what went on for all those glory years was all down to that signing. Signed by Bruce Rioch, allegedly. We was in charge at the time, but what
David Dean wasn't it really? But
yeah, David Dean was the one that probably got in there. But an absolute outstanding player. Paul Merson, give him it was number 10 at the time for Arsenal, and he said, "Oh well, he wants my shirt. He can have it." And things like even professional footballers like Wrighty, like Paul Merson, were going back in for sitting in, getting a shower, and they'd look out the window, and Dennis Bergkamp was still doing extra training, and it made them, they openly admitted. They said, look, if a player of that ability is out there doing extra training, well, we need to do it as well. Just changed football completely, and a wonderful, wonderful player. I do put him, like I know I've said about Patrick Vieira. I think Patrick Vieira is up there with him, but Dennis probably is the best Arsenal player that's ever played for Arsenal. And I think that the one thing that just gives it to him over Henry and even Vieira, if I'm going to be honest, is that he never flirted with going anywhere else. He loved it. He loved it at Arsenal, and that was what it was. Where the other two, flirted and eventually went. But so for Dennis Bergkamp, he was Arsenal through and through.
But there weren't much moaning either, Lee, was there? He was 100% focused in training. If he was on the bench, so what? He'll come on and he'll try and score. And if he was dropped, who cares? He comes off back on as a sub. It's brilliant.
That's a magnificent point because when you're the number one for so long, and then all of a sudden you're not, when you've got to come on the when your time's up a little bit, like because your ego, when you're that good, there must be an ego, to be that good. Like, but then for the manager to turn around and say, well, you'll be on the bench today, but then train all that week as hard as what he was if he was starting. What a role model to have for the younger players coming through as well, because I can tell you that takes a lot, and then come on the bench, and when he come on there was lots of times he'd come on with 20, 25 minutes to go and make things happen. Or he'd get taken off, but as you say, never moan, never groan, because he knew exactly that. I can't do it from the start, but I'll tell you what, I can do it from the bench. Fantastic attitude, and
love the guy, mate. Absolutely loved the guy. And I think Van Persie, when he first come and signed for Arsenal, obviously was huge fan of Dennis Bergkamp in Dutch. But I remember him, he said he sat there on his first day and he was being shown round, and he sat there and watched the guys train because he was doing all the admin side of things and paperwork side of things. And they were playing Piggy in the middle, he said. And Dennis Bergkamp was just by far the best player out there. He could watching him. And he said they all played Piggy in the middle. They're all mucking around. And he said, and Dennis Bergkamp didn't give the ball away once. He's the only player he didn't give it away once, and he was 36 at the time. It's just ridiculous talent. It's unbelievable, outstanding player. So after totally agree with you there. Do you know what? I'd be disgraced if you didn't put him in, Mark. So I'm glad you got to see him live. Obviously, you mentioned Thierry Henry as well, mate. Might as well move on to him because another great player for Arsenal.
Yeah, again, another one. What more can you say? It's a bit of a slow start, wasn't he? But Christ, did he get going? My word, he was unbelievable player, history maker, character. Favourite ever goal against Fabian Barthez. He had his back to goal, rolled it into him, and he flicked it up, spun the centre half, and volleyed it into the far corner. We won the game 1-0. Talking about players, no one else being able to do that at that time, at that moment. No one else would have even considered doing something like that. But he was superb, and again, quite rightly, there's a statue outside the ground. Everybody knows he's in the team. I was lucky enough to watch him.
Yeah,
superb.
you can't argue that. What are you never lost a North London derby. You know what I mean? So that's always that's got to be in esteem. And I think that, you know, some people always hit me with or say, oh yeah, but he never done it in big games. You know, like missed out, never scored in the cup final, of course the Champions League final, missed a couple of chances. But I'll tell you what, 2-1 down to Liverpool. After going out of the FA Cup and the Champions League in the week before that, 2-1 down at Highbury, and everybody in that ground at that day was saying that we've blown it. We're going to, you know, it's just, what's happened, like, you know what I mean? And he come along with the second half performance that I've never seen from an individual ever. Never playing for Arsenal ever.
You say that about Bergkamp coming off the bench. Now, Henry done it a few times. He was being rested and stuff.
Yeah.
You know, I've seen him come off the bench, as I've mentioned before, and just come on and go, well, I'll sort this out. You know, famously, Leeds United on when the Messiah.
Oh, unbelievable!
You know, so
unbelievable.
He's
written in the stars, wasn't it?
No one's arguing with that, are they?
Oh, do you know? Sorry, do you know who could have been as good as him, if not better?
Anelka.
Nicholas Anelka.
It goes back to attitude, Lee.
Yeah, you know what I mean? He was the best teenager I'd ever seen. He was absolutely brilliant, and it all went to his head, which was such a shame. But I can tell you that now, he don't, you know, crying shame, because for a 2-year period there, he was as good as anything I've ever seen. So,
Nigel brings up a great point here, because I was at this game the following week when we thrashed Leeds 5-0 and Henry scored 4 goals. I remember that night, and I remember sitting there thinking, this guy is actually the best player in his position I've ever seen. And honestly, it was that good that night. And I remember Andy Gray commentating on his 4th goal, and he said, I've seen a lot of things in 25 years. I haven't seen anything like him. And he said, I told you before the game that he was special, but he is irreplaceable, this guy. He is that good. And he would just get, and it would be games where it would just be 0-0, and you think, oh, Henry hasn't scored yet. Oh, there it is, goal, 1-0. It was just that consistent amount of goals he would score. And I think it was Merson or Wrighty, I can't remember, said that it was like watching a 26-year-old playing against an under-13s team, because he was just running around them that easily, especially that Leeds game that night. He just took the ball and he just run it around everyone.
That Spurs game.
The Spurs goal, you know, like Lee says, the Liverpool one, the Spurs goal was up there as well. That was a brilliant one, taking it round just like one length of pitch to the other. You know, and the only thing about Henry that I was gutted about was the what if moment of if he would have just put that in the Champions League final. You know, he went through, and you just think I've seen him slot them home so often, and that one goes wide, and you think, what could have been, you know? But what a player, absolutely amazing, top goal scorer. You can't really not put him in. So that leaves one more, mate. Who have you gone for? This may surprise a few, I suppose.
You reckon?
I don't know. I suppose if you're not gone for Righty, so
yeah. Well, I didn't see him, but I've seen Aubameyang. I've seen Kanu. I've seen I don't know, Nicholas Bentner. I've seen Overmars. I don't know. Seen a few, but Olivier Giroud. Alan Smith is my final choice.
Smudge.
And Smudger Smith, because he was the Golden Boot winner the season we won at Anfield. He won a couple of Golden Boots. I'm reading this because you have to believe it. He's won other, you know, European Cup Winners' Cup. Who could forget? I've mentioned it before, you know, Ian Wright suspended, Kevin Campbell stepped up, filled his place, played alongside Smith, and it was Smith who scored from outside the box with a volley. He's won it all. He's played so many games for us, big goals as well. You know, you look back and it's like Alan Smith's goal, Alan Smith, this game, Alan Smith. You know, he was a terrific player. He's a main focal point of what we did for a very long time under George Graham, you know. Without that outlet, you know, I'm not sure that George Graham's system would have worked for those years, you know, 89, 91, stuff like that. So, and the Cup Winners' Cup. Yeah, I mean, what can you say? I think he's hugely underrated. He got to the end of his career, and again, we're talking about characters and gentlemen and stuff like that. He only got booked twice in his entire career. You know, not that that matters because I actually like people who get sent off, but it just shows you the character of the man, you know, and the way he played the game and just done his job. Like David O'Leary, just done his job, went home, had dinner with a wife. You know, that's you can see that's what he's like now. He does his job, Sky, gets a taxi home, has dinner with a wife. You know, he's just a lovely guy. He was paid to do a job. He did it fantastically well. He was the best in the business in his time at doing his job. And I'd just like to give him a little nod and say thanks, you know, thanks for that Cup Winners' Cup night. Thanks for 89. Thanks for many other goals along the way. Superb player.
Yeah. Can't really disagree, Lee, really. I know we've had some great strikers in the past, and we've mentioned most of them, to be fair. But, I mean, Alan Smith in the 89 scored the first goal with the header, and if that wouldn't have gone in, then we wouldn't have won the league that night. So we've got a lot to thank him for it.
Yeah, oh, definitely. Those 2-3 seasons that Mark's talking about, top goal scorer. You know, when we won the league in 89, top golden boot, got the golden boot in 91 as well. I think Mark said it spot on there when he says that he was underrated because he could do, I think he does, the hardest thing in football is to score goals. The second hardest thing to do in football is to hold the ball up when you've got centre-halves kicking you. Now, he had centre-halves kicking him when you was allowed to do it. You're not allowed to do it now. And he made that look very, very easy, holding the ball up, bringing in other players, you know. Also, the part for the Mickey Thomas goal, you know, if a lot of players, the ball bounces off of him and all that, but he had the ability to hold it for a big fella, good touch. And, you know, I think he's right. I think that if probably because of his personality, not like as flamboyant as probably Wrighty and Kevin at the time, probably like that sort of wanes him down a little bit, if do you know what I'm saying? Like, you know, but for those couple of seasons, you know, I was playing football then, you know, so you'd come off at the game and say like, "Oh, Arsenal 1-2-1," and very much who scored? Smith, Merson, Smith, Smith, Campbell. You know, it did change when Wrighty come there. I think that the emphasis went on more on the Wrighty, but for those couple of seasons. 87, 88, I think he joined in 87, so it was 88 he played. I think he scored in the League Cup final, you know, so I think Noel Quinn played the year before. He was a good player, but, you know, we had an upgrade when Smithy came in here because he could do it all. And, and I agree with what Mark's saying there, you know, he didn't put himself about, you know, and a lot of centre-forwards in those days had to, you know, but he was that good that he didn't have to do that. And that's a very, very good point that Mark made. I'm impressed by that, Mark.
He was also in the first game that I ever saw of Arsenal was in 1993 at Highbury. We won. It was a league Huddersfield Cup and Huddersfield Town, a League Cup. We won the first leg away from home 5-0 and managed to get tickets. And my dad never took me to a game because he don't like Arsenal. So his best mate, took me up there, Keithy Taylor. Drove all the way up there on a school night. It was a dark night in the middle of winter, and Alan Smith and Kevin Campbell started up front. So that was, you know, the thing. But I think we went 1-0 down. We drew 1-1 anyway. Alan Smith obviously scored. So there you go, Alan Smith. The first time I ever went to Highbury, he scored the goal, you know. And
No arguing there, mate. No arguments there. Before we go through your team in full, Mark, just to ask you who your manager would be if you had to pick a manager, Arsenal manager. Gonna be between two, innit?
What, Stuart Houston and Freddie Lundgren?
Yeah, Unai Emery and Stuart Houston.
It's George Graham or Wenger, innit? But I think I'm sure that everybody would agree that if you could get George Graham to sort the defence out and Arsene Wenger to take care of the midfield and forwards, you would have the perfect manager, wouldn't you? And as well as long as Wenger was looking after the canteen and George Graham was looking after the Christmas party. I think that would be a bit of a setup. I will go with George Graham because that's what I fell in love with as a defender. That's what I know If you don't concede, you don't lose. And Wenger, I think, will have been very guilty over the years of going away from home, and all we had to do was not get beat. And he went up there and set a team up and got thrashed 8-2. And it had a psychological impact on the remaining games, or the next few games, whereas if it had just gone up there and I don't know, but who can knock Arsene Wenger? I don't think you can knock.
Well, I don't think you're knocking him. I understand why.
I hope people know that, that I'm not knocking him at all, because he has achieved more in the game. I don't know. Can I change my mind, George? Sorry, George.
Do what you want, mate. Do what you want. I think you've given a good argument to why you picked George Graham.
One of them two.
Yeah. Fair enough, mate. Your team in full is David Seaman in goal, Lee Dixon at right back, Ashley Cole at left back. You've gone with Tony Adams and Martin Keown as your centre back pairing. You've gone for a free in midfield field of Patrick Vieira, Aaron Ramsey, and Ray Parlour. And you've gone for Thierry Henry, Dennis Bergkamp, and Alan Smith up front. That's a hell of a team, isn't it? To be honest with you, mate, that is a hell of a team. If that team finished now, if it played now, it wouldn't be ninth in the league like us, would it?
I think so, because I think they'd set it up slightly differently. I mean, we're calling it a traditional 4-3-3, aren't we? But I think you'd definitely have Alan Smith up top as a focal point. You'd have Henry sitting in a hole, a number 10 role that Dan loves. You'd have Henry on that wide left, something like that. You'd have Parlour and Ramsey running off of Vieira, wouldn't you? We'd word it slightly different these days, wouldn't we? I mean, you could argue also that it's a 4-4-2 with Bergkamp sitting in a hole, but I agree with you, Dan. It wouldn't be 10th.
No, you're very true there, mate. And before we go, mate, your hero was Ian Wright, but you didn't get to see him play live. So out of those players, who was your favourite Arsenal player?
Tony Adams, without doubt. He was my hero. Not just for the way that he played the game. I wanted to be Tony Adams, obviously not totally, but he used to come down to He used to come down to where I live. By the way, he used to go. Him and Ray Parlour used to go on nights out, and Bod's of my sister and stuff like that, a few years older than me, used to see him down the town and things like that. A couple of night after a game and bits and pieces like that. So he's and more, not just what he done on the pitch, as I said before. What he's done with his life and the way he's turned it around, and the ambassador he is, and what he does now for giving help to people in the game, and with that program that he runs, I can't, the name eludes me now, but his services to the sport are second to none.
Fair enough. Mate, that's a great team, and I've enjoyed it, boys, talking about some Arsenal memories. It's been nice to reminisce, and when Arsenal used to win stuff, it's nice, isn't it? A bit depressing at the moment.
It wasn't that long ago. It wasn't that long ago.
It weren't, mate. It weren't that long ago, mate. It weren't that long ago. Mark, thank you very much, mate. Been an absolute pleasure. I'm glad you managed to do that. Lee, always a pleasure as well, mate.
I enjoyed that. That was good. Good listen. That was really enjoyed it.
Good stuff. If you do want to get the chance to win this prize that Mark is holding up, if you have joined us in the chat room, then you have the chance to win this. Please like the video, like it on Twitter, retweet it, and we will pick someone at random that can have the chance to win this great prize. We're going to be back on Monday night. Craig is going to be back hosting with as many of us that are available as possible to give more content at the moment during this time. But until then, please stay safe, guys, and up the Arsenal.
Up the Arsenal.
Up the Arsenal. Stay safe, boys and girls.